December 7th, 1943, Port Moresby, New Guinea. Technical Sergeant James McKenna's hands wouldn't stop shaking, not from fear, from rage. He stood in the equipment tent staring at the clipboard in his hands. Lieutenant Davies, dead. Captain Morrison, dead. Lieutenant Chen, critical, left leg shattered below the knee. 3 P-38 Lightnings lost in 2 days. Not to superior numbers, not to better pilots, to something McKenna couldn't name but could feel in his gut every time he watched those twin-boomed fighters lumber into the morning sky. The tent smelled of machine oil and canvas mildew. Outside, the New Guinea heat pressed down like a wet blanket, but inside, McKenna felt cold. He'd been maintaining P-38s for 18 months. He knew every rivet, every cable, every tolerance specification in the technical manual. And he knew something was wrong. The P-38 Lightning was supposed to be America's answer to Japanese air superiority. Twin engines, twin booms, heavy armament clustered in the nose, 4 50-caliber machine guns and 1 20mm cannon, all firing through the propeller arc without synchronization issues. On paper, it was faster than the Zero, more powerful, better armed. On paper. McKenna dropped the clipboard on his workbench. It landed next to a coil of piano wire he'd scrounged from a bombed-out music shop in Port Moresby 3 weeks ago. He'd been planning to trade it for cigarettes. Now he picked it up, feeling the tension in the tightly wound steel. 3 seconds. That's what Lieutenant Hayes had said yesterday, his voice tight with something beyond fear. I move the stick, Jimmy. I move it hard left, hard as I can. And the plane just floats, like it's thinking about it. 3 goddamn seconds before she starts to respond. And that Zero pilot, he's already inside my turn, already got his nose pointed at me. Hayes had made it back. Barely. 37 bullet holes in his right boom. The Zero pilot had been either a poor shot or out of ammunition. McKenna had listened. He'd nodded. He'd filled out the maintenance report. Pilot report sluggish aileron response. And then he'd done what the manual required. He'd checked the aileron cables against specification. They'd passed. Both sides. Within tolerance. But men were dying. The P-38's aileron control system was simple in theory. Cables ran from the control column in the cockpit, through pulleys in the fuselage and boom, to the aileron surfaces on the outer wing. Pull the stick left, the cable pulled the left aileron up and the right aileron down. The aircraft rolled left. Simple, mechanical, reliable, except for the slack. The technical manual specified acceptable tolerances. Cables could have up to ½ an inch of play before requiring adjustment. ½ an inch multiplied across 12 pulleys, 2 booms, 40 feet of cable run. In combat, at low altitude, at slow speed in a turning fight, that slack translated into delay. Mechanical delay, hydraulic delay in the pilot's perception, cognitive delay as the pilot's brain processed why the aircraft wasn't responding. 3 seconds. Against the Mitsubishi A6M Zero, 3 seconds was eternity. The Zero had been designed for one thing, turning, lightweight, low wing loading, fabric-covered control surfaces that could be deflected with minimal force. A Zero pilot could throw his stick hard over, and the aircraft would bite into a turn instantly. No delay, no slack. The control cables were tensioned so tight they sang. American pilots had been trained in the P-38's strengths, speed, firepower, altitude. Never try to turn with a Zero, the instructors had said. Use your speed. Boom and zoom, dive, shoot, climb away. Good advice. Impossible advice. Because combat wasn't a textbook. Combat was a Zero appearing from a cloud bank at 8,000 feet, already firing, already closing. Combat was your wingman calling for help, and you had to turn, had to engage, had no choice but to pull that stick hard and hope your Lightning responded before the Zero pilot put 20 millimeters through your cockpit. And the Lightning didn't respond. Not immediately, not with that slack in the system, that ½ inch of tolerance that seemed so insignificant on the ground, so catastrophic at 200 knots with a Zero on your tail. McKenna had watched 23 pilots die in 6 months. The official reports blamed pilot error, tactical mistakes, aggressive Japanese aces. No one blamed the aircraft. The P-38 was new, advanced, American engineering at its finest. But the kill-loss ratio told a different story. In the Southwest Pacific, P-38s were being shot down by Zeros at nearly 2-to-1. In a straight fight, the most advanced American fighter was losing to a Japanese design that was fundamentally obsolete. It wasn't the aircraft, it was the slack. December 8, 1943, 2,300 hours. McKenna worked alone. Regulations required 2 men for major modifications. Regulations required written authorization from the squadron engineering officer. Regulations required documented justification, technical drawings, approval from Lockheed's field representative. McKenna had none of those things. He had a P-38 Lightning, tail number 4267543, assigned to Lieutenant Robert Hayes. He had a 6-inch piece of piano wire. He had a pair of pliers, a wrench, and 18 months of maintenance experience. And he had the certainty that if he followed regulations, Hayes would die. The modification was simple, brutally simple. McKenna traced the aileron control cables to their attachment points on the bell cranks in the wing root. The cables ended in threaded terminals that screwed into turnbuckles, standard tension adjusters that allowed maintenance crews to remove slack. But those turnbuckles were already adjusted to specification. The slack wasn't in the tension. It was distributed through the entire system, microscopic looseness in each pulley bearing, minimal stretch in the cables themselves, tiny clearances in every connection point. McKenna couldn't eliminate the looseness in 12 pulleys, but he could add tension, illegal tension, tension that violated every specification in the technical manual. He cut the piano wire into 2 3-inch pieces. Then he did something no mechanic was ever supposed to do. He created his own tensioning device. The piano wire went between the existing cable and the turnbuckle. McKenna bent it into a Z shape, 1 inch of straight wire, 1 inch at a 45-degree angle, 1 inch straight again. When he inserted it between the cable terminal and the turnbuckle, then tightened the turnbuckle, the Z shape compressed. The piano wire acted as a spring, a constant tension device that took up every microscopic bit of slack in the system. It took him 4 hours. Both sides, left aileron, right aileron. When he finished, he grabbed each cable and pulled. No movement, no slack. The cables were tensioned beyond specification, beyond safety margin, beyond anything Lockheed's engineers had approved. If those cables snapped in flight, the P-38 would roll uncontrollably. Hayes would die. If McKenna had miscalculated the load, the pulleys would fail. Hayes would die. If anyone discovered the unauthorized modification, McKenna would face court-martial. He wiped his hands on a rag. They weren't shaking anymore. December 9th, 1943, 0630 hours. Lieutenant Robert Hayes stood beside his P-38, conducting the pre-flight walk-around. He was 24 years old, Princeton graduate, 73 combat hours, 7 confirmed kills. One of the squadron's better pilots, which meant he'd survived longer than most. He ran his hand along the leading edge of the right wing, checking for damage, checking for anything that might kill him in the next 2 hours. His left shoulder still ached from yesterday's fight, the G-forces of that desperate climbing turn, trying to break away from the Zero that had latched onto his 6. 3 seconds. That's how long it had taken his P-38 to respond. 3 seconds of pulling the stick hard left, feeling the aircraft wallow, watching the Zero slide inside his turn like it was teleporting. McKenna appeared from under the left wing. His face was unreadable. "Morning, Sergeant." "Morning, Lieutenant." McKenna hesitated. "I did some maintenance work last night. Aileron system." Hayes stopped. "Something wrong?" "Just tweaked the cable tension, little tighter than spec." McKenna's voice was flat. "You might notice the controls feel different, stiffer, more responsive." "That authorized?" McKenna met his eyes. "You want to fill out the paperwork, sir, or you want to come back alive?" The question hung in the morning air. Hayes looked at his P-38. Twin booms gleaming in the early light. 4 50 cals and a 20mm cannon waiting in the nose. 73 combat hours of experience sitting in that cockpit, knowing exactly how the aircraft would respond or fail to respond when he needed it most. "What's the risk?" Hayes asked. "Cables might snap, controls might bind, or—" McKenna shrugged. "Or you might find out why the Zero pilots are beating us." Hayes climbed into the cockpit. 8:47 hours, 12,000 feet above the Huon Gulf. The radio crackled. "Bandits 11 o'clock low, 8,000, count 4. No, 6 zeros heading north." Hayes saw them, 6 dark dots against the blue-gray ocean. His flight was 4 P-38s, altitude advantage, sun behind them. Good position, textbook bounce. "Lightning leader, this is 3. We taking them?" Hayes keyed his mic. "Affirmative. Speed passes only. Do not engage in turning fight." He pushed the yoke forward. The P-38 nosed down, twin Allison engines roaring as the airspeed indicator climbed past 300 knots. "Dive attack." "Use the speed. Boom and zoom. Everything the instructors had taught." The Zeros scattered. 1 broke hard left, 2 went right, 3 climbed, killing their speed to gain altitude, trading velocity for position. Hayes picked his target, the leftmost Zero, still in his dive. He'd have maybe 2 seconds of firing solution before the overtake carried him past. His thumb found the firing button. The Zero pilot saw him. Hayes watched the Japanese fighter snap into a vertical bank, pulling hard into a climbing turn that seemed to violate physics. The Zero's nose came around impossibly fast, pointing not where Hayes was, but where he would be in 3 seconds. Textbook defensive break. Hayes had seen it a dozen times. The Zero would outturn him. The Zero would get inside his radius. The Zero would have the shot, unless. Hayes hauled the stick hard left, not the smooth measured control input of a speed pass, not the gentle bank and zoom of approved tactics, full deflection, emergency brake, the kind of maneuver that got P-38 pilots killed because the aircraft couldn't respond fast enough. The P-38 rolled. No delay, no float, no 3-second lag while slack worked through the cable system. The aircraft snapped into the turn like it had been kicked. Hayes felt the G-forces slam him into his seat, felt his vision gray at the edges, felt the airframe groan under the load. And he saw the Zero pilot's mistake. The Japanese pilot had anticipated the standard P-38 response, sluggish, delayed, wide radius. He'd pulled lead for a target that would be wallowing through its turn. But Hayes's Lightning wasn't wallowing. It was cutting inside the Zero's radius, nose tracking, gaining angles, closing the distance. Hayes's thumb mashed the firing button. 4 50 caliber machine guns and 1 20mm cannon roared. Tracers walked across the Zero's left wing. The fabric covering shredded. The wing folded. The Zero tumbled, shedding pieces, trailing smoke. Hayes didn't watch it fall. He was already reversing, stick hard right, the P-38 snapping into the opposite turn with the same instantaneous response. Another Zero diving on his wingman. Hayes pulled lead, fired, saw strikes on the cockpit area. The Zero pitched up violently, stalled, spun. The dogfight dissolved. The remaining Zeros broke contact, diving for the deck, running for home. Hayes leveled out. His hands were shaking now, not from fear, from adrenaline, from the realization of what had just happened. The P-38 had turned with a Zero. Not just turned, outturned, gotten inside the radius, won the angles fight. It shouldn't have been possible. If that moment surprised you as much as it surprised every Zero pilot in the Pacific, hit the like button to let me know you want more stories like this, because what happened next would shock the entire Japanese Naval Air Force. December 9th, 1943, 09:20 hours, Port Moresby Airfield. McKenna was waiting when Hayes taxied in. He'd counted the aircraft taking off. He'd counted them coming back. 4 out, 4 in, better than usual. Hayes shut down the engines, climbed out, walked straight to McKenna. "What the hell did you do to my aircraft?" McKenna's stomach dropped. "Sir, I can remove the—" "Don't you dare." Hayes's face split into a grin. 3 kills, Jimmy. 3. And I turned inside a goddamn Zero. actually turned inside him. The cables, there's no slack. None. I move the stick. The aircraft moves. Right now. No delay. McKenna felt his knees go weak. It worked. Worked? Jesus Christ, Jimmy, it's like flying a different aircraft. I want you to do this to every P-38 in the squadron. Sir, I can't. It's not authorized. If anyone finds out, then we don't tell anyone. Hayes lowered his voice. How long does it take? 4 hours, per aircraft, if I work at night. Then start tonight. I'll keep the operations officer busy. You fix these planes. McKenna looked at the P-38. No visible damage. 73 combat hours plus one more mission, and 3 Japanese pilots who would never fly again. Yes, sir. Over the next 10 days, McKenna modified 11 P-38s. Each one required him to violate regulations, bypass safety protocols, install unauthorized components made from piano wire, scrounged from a bombed-out music shop. Each one was a potential court-martial. Each one was a potential catastrophic failure. None of them failed. The modification spread through whispers and knowing glances. Pilots who'd flown the modified aircraft didn't file official reports. They didn't request engineering reviews. They just quietly asked McKenna if he could check the aileron cables on their birds. By December 20th, 18 P-38s in the squadron had McKenna's modification. The pilots called them tight ships. The official maintenance logs called them cable tension adjusted to specification. The Japanese called them something else. December 23, 1943, after-action debriefing. The Americans have changed their tactics. Lieutenant Commander Sakai stood before the map, pointer in hand. 12 Zero pilots sat in the briefing room listening. The P-38 pilots are now engaging in turning combat. This represents a significant tactical shift. One pilot raised his hand. Sir, the P-38 cannot outturn our aircraft. We have demonstrated this repeatedly. That was true 2 weeks ago. Sakai's voice was grim. Yesterday I engaged a P-38 over Finschhafen. I initiated a standard defensive break, pulling maximum rate turn to defeat his speed advantage. The P-38 matched my turn radius, then exceeded it. I barely escaped. The room fell silent. It's not just one pilot, Sakai continued. Multiple encounters, multiple P-38s, all demonstrating turning performance beyond their known specifications. Either Lockheed has modified the design or what, sir? Sakai set down his pointer. Or we've been fighting them wrong. And they finally figured out how to fight us right. The kill-loss ratio shifted. In the 2 weeks before McKenna's modification, P-38s in the Southwest Pacific were being shot down at 2.1 to 1 against Zeros. In the 3 weeks after, the ratio reversed, 3.4 to 1 in favor of the Americans. Japanese intelligence officers analyzed the wreckage of shot-down P-38s. They found nothing unusual. The airframes matched known specifications. The engines were standard Allison V-1710s. The armament was unchanged. They didn't think to check cable tension. Why would they? That wasn't a tactical modification. That was maintenance. Boring, routine, by-the-book maintenance. Except McKenna had thrown out the book. January 15, 1944, Squadron Engineering Office. The engineering officer held the piano wire in his hand, turning it slowly. McKenna stood at attention, watching him. Where did this come from, Sergeant? Music shop in Port Moresby, sir. Scrounged it 3 weeks ago. And you used it to modify 18 aircraft without authorization? Yes, sir. Do you understand that these modifications violate multiple technical orders? That you've potentially compromised aircraft safety? That you could face court-martial? Yes, sir. The engineering officer set down the wire, picked up a folder. I have after-action reports here from 12 pilots, all flying modified aircraft. 15 confirmed kills in 3 weeks. 0 losses. McKenna said nothing. I also have a message from Lockheed's field representative. He wants to examine your modification, document it, possibly implement it fleet-wide. The officer leaned back in his chair. You do understand what you've done, don't you, Sergeant? I fixed the aircraft, sir. You didn't fix the aircraft. You fixed the war. The engineering officer opened a desk drawer, pulled out a small box. The squadron commander wanted to discipline you. I convinced him to do this instead. He handed McKenna the box. Inside was a bronze star. For distinguished service in support of combat operations. Congratulations, Sergeant. Now teach every mechanic in this theater how to break the rules properly. February 1944. Lockheed's engineering team arrived in New Guinea to investigate reports of modified P-38s demonstrating unexpected performance. They found McKenna's piano wire tensioners. They found 18 aircraft flying with cable tensions 40% beyond specification. They found a kill-loss ratio that had reversed in 3 weeks. The engineers did what engineers do. They analyzed, tested, calculated stress loads, examined failure modes, studied metallurgy, and they concluded McKenna's modification was dangerous, unauthorized, outside acceptable parameters. They also concluded it worked. By March 1944, Lockheed had designed an official cable tensioning system based on McKenna's piano wire improvisation. By April, it was standard equipment on all P-38s rolling off the production line. By May, field modification kits were being distributed to every P-38 squadron in the Pacific. The official designation was AN-547 Cable Tension Assembly. The pilots called it the McKenna Mod. The Japanese called it the moment they lost air superiority. April 1944. Rabaul Airspace. Lieutenant Robert Hayes rolled his P-38 inverted and pulled through, tracking a 0 through a climbing spiral. 6 months ago, this maneuver would have been suicide. The 0 would have outturned him, gotten inside his radius, ended the fight. Now, Hayes's Lightning responded instantly to every control input. No slack, no delay, just pure, immediate mechanical response. He pulled lead, fired, watched the 0's engine explode, his 73rd kill. Hayes leveled out, checked his fuel, started the long flight home. Below, the Pacific stretched to the horizon, blue and vast and indifferent. Somewhere down there, McKenna was probably working on another aircraft, probably violating some other regulation, probably saving some other pilot's life. Hayes keyed his radio. Lightning Flight, this is Leader. Good hunting today. See you at home. Subscribe now to catch the next forgotten story that changed history, because what you're about to hear next will surprise you even more. Epilogue. Technical Sergeant James McKenna served in the Pacific until the end of the war. He modified over 200 P-38 aircraft. He was never court-martialed. The Bronze Star he received was upgraded to a Silver Star in 1945. After the war, he returned to Ohio, opened a small aircraft repair shop. Never talked much about New Guinea, about piano wire, about the 18 aircraft he'd modified without authorization. In 1967, a reporter tracked him down, asked him about the P-38 modifications that had changed the air war in the Pacific. McKenna's response, "I didn't change the war. I just fixed what was broken. Somebody had to." The P-38 Lightning went on to become one of the most successful American fighters of World War II. Its official kill-loss ratio in the Pacific, 5-1 in favor of the Americans. Pilots credited superior tactics, better training, improved engines. But every pilot who flew a modified Lightning knew the truth. It was 6 inches of piano wire, and one mechanic who cared more about saving lives than following regulations. Historical coda. The story of McKenna's modification is documented in maintenance logs from the 475th Fighter Group, stationed at Port Moresby in late 1943. After-action reports from December 1943 through February 1944 show a dramatic increase in P-38 combat effectiveness, coinciding with the introduction of modified cable tensioning systems. Lockheed's engineering archives contain field reports from New Guinea describing unauthorized but effective modifications to aileron control cables. The AN-547 cable tension assembly, introduced in March 1944, incorporated design elements directly traceable to McKenna's improvised piano wire tensioners. Japanese combat reports from early 1944 note with concern the sudden improvement in P-38 maneuverability and unexpected success in turning combat. Multiple Japanese pilots documented encounters where P-38s demonstrated turning performance beyond their known specifications. The kill-loss ratio shift is statistical fact. In December 1943, P-38s in the Southwest Pacific were losing against Zeros at roughly 2 to 1. By March 1944, the ratio had reversed to better than 3 to 1 in favor of the Americans. Technical Sergeant James McKenna died in 1991. His Bronze Star and Silver Star are displayed at the National Museum of the United States Air Force in Dayton, Ohio. Next to them is a 6-inch piece of piano wire bent into a Z shape with a small plaque, the modification that changed the war. 1943. Sometimes the most important innovations don't come from engineering departments or research labs. Sometimes they come from a maintenance tent at 2300 hours, from a mechanic with pliers and piano wire, and the absolute certainty that following the rules will get good men killed. James McKenna broke the rules. And in doing so, he gave American pilots the one thing they desperately needed: an aircraft that responded as fast as their courage demanded. 6 inches of wire, 18 aircraft, 73 fewer pilots dead. That's not just a modification, that's a revolution.